Hello, second grade teachers. Today we're going to be looking at the overview of the explorations in nonfiction writing, which you will see coming up in Unit 5. We're going to start by looking at the ARC, so clicking on second grade, going to Language Arts, and then finding the tab up here that says Pilot for Nonfiction Writing. Everything that you need to know about the pilot is stored in that tab. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down and look at our overview, the units to pilot at a glance. This is a great resource because you can see exactly where the units are coming up or where it's coming up in the units. And as you can see here, we have Unit 5. Topics are important to us. And then the next one will come up in Unit 8, I can research. So then going back out, we're going to come over here and click on second grade. And this is your planning guide. So you can see everything that will happen in Unit 5 and everything that will happen in Unit 8. Where it falls in your unit, the specific TEKs are listed here, and we'll look at that in a minute when we go into the ARC. The TEKs-based genre is research and persuasive. And then in our resource, it will be in the Persuade tab, and we'll look at our resources here in a minute. In the unit overview is a great place to gather information of what is coming up in the unit, and Kate will take us through that in a little while when we look closer at our resources. You have all of the lesson pages listed in front of you. You'll notice in this session in this unit you're doing sessions 1 through 9, skipping session 10 and moving on to 11. We also are provided with mentor text in the form of a big book, so you will have access to that as well. You can see assessments are listed for you. It has ongoing monitoring sheets, a personal checklist, and an individual assessment record. And then also the resource includes PowerWrite pages that you can use, and these are excellent to use across the curriculum. So these would be writing that happens outside of your workshop that might happen in science or other content area. All right, so now we're going to go and take a look at the ARC. Scroll down to Unit 5. And we want to make sure that we look at the ongoing TEKs for this unit. And so you can see the ongoing TEKs here is your writing process. So taking students through generating ideas, drafting, and all of the steps in your writing. And then scrolling down to our other TEKs. So again, this is our expository TEKs and also that persuasive text. So students write persuasive statements about issues that are important to the student for the appropriate audience in the school, home, or local community. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our resources. So you can see this is one of the resources. This is where all of your lessons will be found. You have a guide to teaching nonfiction writing. So this gives you, offers instructional support and talks about the rationale and gives you scaffolds for success. And then again, here's the big book of mentor text that I mentioned earlier. So all of your mentor text for your lessons will be in there. And as well in the back of this book, there is extra resources.
Okay, so now we'll get into the resource, and for Unit 5, we're going to look in the Persuade Purpose tab. And to get us started, these first couple pages really help you get going on the reasoning behind and the overall objectives. And so during this unit, you're going to be doing a class project and an individual product. And in the class project, the students will work together, and they're going to be using the mentor text from your big book about Washington, D.C. And it's really going to be looking at how to collect, organize, revise, edit, and publish information in a persuasive travel brochure. And then students are going to create their own travel brochure. And just know that at any time that you think that a different topic was important, there's different content, you're free to change whatever you would like about that. The next few pages just continue to be an overview and have some other possible suggestions if you want to take your persuasive writing further. This text also highly suggests using research stations, and in that you will be able to, you'll need to set those up before you get started. And in the back of this book, the teaching book on page 285, there's also a lot of support in getting your research stations set up and using them throughout your unit. It's also made a note that for their individual products that you limit the other cities for them to research so that you're able to better manage the resources and support in small groups. This page focuses all on the standards and is a really good overview that covers all the objectives for the unit. And so it's important for you also to be very familiar with all of these objectives before you get started teaching. And remembering that at any time, it's really important to tailor any of these lessons and any of your conferences and small group instruction to the needs of your students. Ashley mentioned a little earlier about some of the tools that we have for assessment, and this resource has all of them available for you in the back. And it is easy to find in the resources section, and it is a monitoring sheet for your whole class, a daily planner that can help you keep track of students who are being successful or which students might need some additional support. And it also has an individual evaluation record, which is really helpful when you're thinking about tracking your students' progress over the course of this unit. There's also some really good things to think about before you get started teaching the unit. Really always remembering to take the time to meet the needs of your students. Also spending some time building background knowledge prior to the unit, getting students familiar with your city or your town, and getting students familiar with basic observations about persuasive texts. It's also really important to have students be able to understand what reasons are, facts, opinions, and really even paying close attention to illustrations. While students are working on the class project, it's really helpful. The mentor text is provided for you. However, use other mentor texts as you feel necessary, and don't feel limited just by the one example that's given in this resource. Some other important notes that are made is that it is essential to model. The teacher should be modeling every step of the process along the way for students. And the book also has some good tips about helping students who might need extra support, such as providing students with sentence frames. And there's also a template provided on the CD-ROM that will help students and give them even stronger support of a template if necessary. Another note is to remember to support students in small groups as needed, and to remember even in small groups to take the time to model the expectation and to model the process for them. It's also important to remember to support all students, so even if they're not struggling, if students are progressing, they'll give you some good tips here as well. So this whole section is about meeting your students' needs and tracking your students' progress. Another note is how important it is to not only model, but to keep your models displayed for students so that they're able to reference them as they're working independently. And then it's also really important, some tips to have kids read aloud to partners before they actually speak aloud to each other, think about what they're going to say before they start writing. Some really nice scaffolds built in as well. It also makes a note to work with writing partners to share and help each other revise. And after the unit, make sure that there is time to share and celebrate. There's also a reflection sheet included that could be helpful for students to reflect on their process. And there is a pre-assessment as well as the post-assessment or the end of the unit composition, and it's really nice to hold on to both of those pieces so you can compare and note your students' progress over time. Then we're going to jump into the first session, and you'll see that the sessions are set up, maybe not with familiar terminology that we typically use here in Round Rock in regards to writing workshop, but you'll see that there is a mini lesson, which we're used to, and then there's writing and coaching, and this is the independent writing time and conferring time. They just use some different vocabulary here, and then the end wrapping up with a share and reflection time. So all of this is here, and it's laid out in a way that we're familiar with. I do want to talk specifically about session 1. In session 1, there is a pre-assessment, and it walks you through all the steps to do that. So you're going to get students really familiar with the topic, with the genre, and then jumping into the pre-assessment. Session 2, we'll be getting to start researching. And then I really wanted to highlight session 4 because revising and editing is included here in this unit, but it's also important to remember to meet the needs of your students as you go along. And so it's really important to be tracking their progress along the way and changing the content if you need to meet the needs of your students. And then here we are back on the ARC looking in the pilot tab, under the pilot tab. And if you scroll down, you'll see the data collection plan from the assessment department. And this is really essential to note a few things. Previously, other grade levels needed to send pre-assessments in. That is no longer required. But at the end of your unit, you will need to send in 3 samples from your classroom. So for every teacher, there needs to be 3 samples. And you'll send one piece of student writing that is above average, one that is average, and one that is not yet at average. And one piece that's essential also, that's something a little different, is there's also going to be a cover page for each piece of writing you sent in. And that's going to look like this. And that will just be stapled to the top of the sample you're sending in, so the assessment department can keep better track of what is coming in. Your starting date for Unit 5 is January 3rd, so good luck with that, and have a happy holiday.